Today's question is Piers Morgan transphobic? I don't know if you know this, but I actually have a transphobe detector, so that's how I can make all these videos, because, like, it works, you know? So I think we all know who Piers Morgan is, maybe. He's on, like, a morning talk show thing with people. I don't know, they just talk about relevant subjects, and lately he's been talking about trans people and tweeting about trans people. One of his favorite jokes to use is, I identify as a penguin. I guess it was a good choice on his part not to become a comedian, because that joke is not even that funny. The first time I ever heard I identify as blank was funny, like maybe the first 3 times, but now that's all people like to use as their argument. So it's like, okay, do you have any new material? Anyways, I was doing my research on him, and I'm gonna show you this tweet. This is what kind of sparked me to make this video. I don't know if you know, but Sam Smith came out as non-binary. Anyways, Sam was wearing this outfit, and it says, like, menswear in it, right? And non-binary is supposed to be non-binary, like, out of the binary. So Piers quoted that tweet and said, sorry. Hey, my microphone died at this part, but anyways. Sorry, what? I thought you were now gender non-binary. Are you back to being a man again? It kind of just doesn't have to be said. Like, I know you can joke around and stuff, but I don't think it's necessary to, like, who cares? Can people just wear what they want? Not only does he like to tweet a lot about trans people, his icon is also his head on a penguin. That made me want to do a little more research on Piers Morgan, because I was like, wow, this dude is kind of obsessed with trans people, and it's weird. So I found this interview from like a month ago, and it is a lot.
Why do you think Piers is so offensive?
Well, I think the way that Piers talks about trans people, and specifically non-binary people, is that you mock them, you make fun of them, you use them as entertainment, you use the lives of real people in this country, a vulnerable minority, as something to make fun of and get a reaction.
So when I first heard that, I was like, wow, he just destroyed him. Like, in the first 25 seconds. I was impressed. I was like, that's everything I would say.
Well, be specific.
Well, when you claim that you're a two-spirit penguin...
Yeah, but you know why I did that?
Go on.
Because you and I had this debate about the 100 genders. And I made the point, if literally you can now identify in 100 different ways your gender, including two-spirit person and all this other stuff, then I am entitled to identify as a two-spirit penguin. In other words, there are no limits. And what's interesting is, you want me to respect all those 100 genders, however ludicrous some of them are, but you have zero respect for my right to identify myself in any way I see fit.
I can see Piers's point, because he's saying, oh, there's 100 genders, so why can't I pick one myself and make one up myself and identify as that? When people hear jokes like this, they're thinking it's against all of the trans people. Now, I'm not saying that there's fake trans people, but there are people who are identifying with weird labels that don't even make sense. And then they classify themselves as transgender, which I don't understand, because I'm just a trans man. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And why is that person representing us? And I'm trying to say that in the nicest way possible. I don't understand the whole 100 gender notion, because I guess I just don't get it.
That is not transphobic. That is exposing a flaw in your position.
It isn't, because being a penguin isn't a gender. That's not on the gender spectrum.
No, but Benjamin, can't you see how he's taking it to the absurd degree?
It doesn't matter how many times you pretend to be Pingu Morgan. That's still not a gender that people can identify with. But what we know is that there will be people watching this programme this morning who might be vulnerable, who might be unsure, that are trans, that are non-binary, and it can do real damage.
There are kids who are watching who could possibly be trans, and then when they see somebody on television mocking it, yeah, it's gonna make them feel shitty. That's why I felt shitty when I was younger, because whenever I heard about trans, it was just like, oh, they're fucking like weird, like sexual weird people, and I was like, yup, so I'm just not gonna ever come out ever.
I think Piers is a beacon of light, and most trans people, and I'm actually going to use the word transitioners here, because transgender now has become something completely different. Transgender now is about floating about in the middle, no commitment, you pick and choose who you want to be.
I don't think the meaning of trans really changed. I think the people who are thinking they're trans are making it sound different than what it actually is. Because, I'm going to say it right now, there are a lot of people who are identifying as trans or something under that umbrella because of past traumas or because of an identity crisis. The media is showing a lot of things that are confusing kids who have been through a lot and trying to discover themselves. When you're a teenager, you're already discovering yourself. And then when you hear about all of this shit on TV, oh, there's 100 genders. Oh, you might be transgender if you like to play with robots. Oh, you might be transgender if you wear basketball shorts. Kids are like, okay, so not only am I confused about everything else in my life, but now I think I might be trans because I am a tomboy. I just don't think the definition of trans has essentially changed. It's just the fact that other people are defining it for us. So then we're kind of getting erased in that process because you have these people saying, well, there's actually 1,000 genders, so I can be whatever I want. And then there's other trans people who are like, yeah, I don't think so. Regardless of who says what, if there's a trans joke, it's made towards all of us. You can't be like, well, it was just made towards the ones who aren't really trans. No, it's towards everyone because everyone looks at us the same. I don't know how to explain that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's hard to say that.
There's a school where I grew up, near where I grew up, in Brighton, right? About 5 miles from where I grew up. There are now 85 kids identifying as gender fluid, non-binary. It is nonsense.
It's confusing people.
It's confusing everybody. You've got kids watching this programme now, hearing you say there are 100 ways to identify your gender. Not male and female. There are 100 ways to... You could be a two-spirit person.
100 ways to be compassionate.
I think 85 students in a school is actually like a pretty alarming rate. Like a good amount of students who are identifying under the trans like umbrella. But when I was in high school, I was the first trans kid that they knew in multiple schools. Trans was not talked about and barely known. Like when I say barely known, my mom had to have a school shut down for a day because none of these people who worked at the school knew what trans was or didn't know how to handle it. So they had to give them training. 6 years ago, a whole staff had to be trained on how to treat LGBT students. And I don't live in a conservative state, I live in Massachusetts. There's many LGBT people here. That goes to show you what's happening today. 85 students in a school. I was one.
Not on gender. And the reason I identified as a two-spirit penguin was actually not, as you think, to make a cheap mockery of people that transition. I completely support all transgender people who transition. I don't support this 100 gender nonsense because I think it trivialises and demeans and makes a mockery of what people like India have
And most people who have transitioned are on Piers' side.
So when I get called transphobic, I'm not transphobic. And I resent you using that phrase. I'm somebody that's challenging this ridiculous notion that there are now 100 genders.
I get that he's not making fun of the whole group of trans people, but at the end of the day, people still think it's just all about every single trans person. So that's why it's toxic. That's why people are mad. You know what I was just thinking too? People from the 1800s, they probably thought, 200 years from now, there'll probably be robots flying cars. And then they come to the future and this is what they see on their TV.
I am entitled to identify as a two-spirit penguin.
I think they would want to die again. So the rest of that conversation goes into a whole other debate, so I'm going to end it there. I wanted to show you this one video clip that I saw of Piers Morgan talking about trans people again. This is from earlier this year, and he actually was talking to a doctor who got fired because he refused to use a trans person's pronouns because of his religion. And Piers Morgan was actually sticking up for trans people. So this is why I'm confused.
What is the pronoun that you object to? Because if somebody born biologically male transitions to be female, why would you not respect that? Why would you not just call them she?
The answer is I don't believe that a person can change sex. I don't believe a person can change gender and that sex and gender are the same thing.
Do you understand that that makes you a bigot? You know, I'm a Christian. I was brought up a Catholic. But when I hear this kind of stuff, my heart sinks. It's like, it's so intolerant of something which is clearly, if people go through a transitioning process from male to female or female to male, it's such an arduous thing to do. That's what I always think. Why would you put yourself through it if you didn't fundamentally believe, as you did clearly, that you're just, that's what you want to be?
So right here, he's not being awful. He's actually sticking up for trans people. Though, I can still say that the jokes he makes aren't that great, and it doesn't make us look any great. It's still harming the trans community. So I want to hear from you guys. I think we agree on a lot of things. Do you think he's transphobic? Do you think the things he says are transphobic? Or do you think he's just being like realistic or logical and trying to fix things? Yeah, but anyways, that is what I wanted to show you guys and discuss. So I will see you next week with a new video. Thank you for watching. Peace.